Vaccination and seasonal decreases have COVID-19 on the run, but the pandemic is staying with us. And even as life gets back to a new normal in many respects, there could be some bumps in the road ahead. So a COVID checkup is in order here on Close Up, and this morning we bring back Dr. Michael Calderwood, now Chief Quality Officer at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center. Dr. Calderwood, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So if New Hampshire is a patient right now in this pandemic, what's your prognosis for us at this time?
So I think really we have some cautious optimism. We are at a really good point in terms of our local numbers. We've seen cases and hospitalizations on the decline really steadily through the spring and into the early summer. And we are seeing our testing numbers suggest that we have low community transmission. There are a few pockets kind of in the south of the state that continue to have a little bit higher numbers. But overall, I would say right now, we are in a good position. My concern is where we might be going forward into the fall, particularly if some of these newer variants were to crop up.
And take us through those scenarios, and I guess I'll add in a question there. I know that, national and state boundaries really are arbitrary and don't make a difference in this at all. But what does a state or a national vaccination rate of 65%, say, get us come November?
Well, I think we really have to be wary of this Delta variant that other countries are dealing with. And as they've seen the proportion of viral infections caused by that variant increase, you've had countries, UK, Israel, some others, most recently Australia, that really have had to roll back into periods where they again are masking. We can get ahead of this, but it really is going to require quite a bit more vaccination. Because of the transmissibility of this newer variant, it spreads a lot quicker in families and causes a much higher rate of hospitalization. And what we're learning is that it is essential to have both shots of the mRNA vaccine to be fully protected. That a single shot really leaves you with only 33% protection. So individuals that may have gotten one but didn't come back are not fully protected. And so we are going to need to see vaccination rates, and we've talked through this pandemic, does it have to be 70%, 80%? With the Delta variant being a reality, it actually is probably going to need to be greater than 90%. So this means everyone needs to be vaccinated.
Wow, and so the entire definition of a variant of concern is that it is more contagious. But explain, how much more contagious is Delta than, say, the rest?
So in terms of transmission within households, it is double the rate of transmission. So without any other protections in place, each individual who is infected with the Delta variant might transmit to 5 or even up to 8 other people. And so that is double what we've otherwise been seeing. The rate of hospitalization is also increased. And if you go all the way back to the initial virus that we were seeing at the start of this pandemic, the wild type, it's about a 4-fold higher risk of hospitalization. And so you're seeing countries like the United Kingdom that are beginning to experience that. Again, the real positive news is that the vaccines work and the vaccines protect against this variant. But in order to be protected, you need to be vaccinated.
Those figures there are an eye-opener for sure. How much built-in immunity do you think we have in New Hampshire or nationally, just from asymptomatic, undiagnosed cases that came and went over the last year and some months that just went through unnoticed?
So it is somewhere about 1 out of every 5 to maybe 1 out of every 4 individuals in the United States was exposed to the virus and may have some level of immunity. That was through about April of 2021. I will say that that is across the country. In terms of our local numbers in New Hampshire and Vermont, that was lower. We've been lucky in that we've had lower rates of viral disease compared to some other areas that were harder hit. But that also means that we have less protection from natural infection.
Let's talk a little bit about the vaccine and a story that's popped up in the last week or so. These cases, small but a notable number of heart inflammation among children who have received the vaccine. How big of a concern is that for you?
So it is something that we need to be aware of, although I will say if you actually look at the numbers, what we've learned is it's most common amongst males between 16 and 30, and that most of this is mild illness. There have been a few hospitalizations and a few people that were quite ill, but overall this has been mild illness that can be managed symptomatically and does not appear to have long-term consequences compared to COVID. And if you look at the actual rates of if you were to vaccinate 1 million people, you're going to prevent a lot of hospitalization, a lot of long-term symptoms, and even death with the vaccine that really outpaces any of these side effects. You'll see certain countries around the world where they've been struggling to vaccinate their populations, and so the World Health Organization has really decided to prioritize adults over children. And some have said, is that because of concerns about the myocarditis? And in reality, it is not. It's that there are countries where they have vaccinated only 1% of their population, and they're trying to think about the highest risk. We, thankfully, in this country have done very well with those in older age groups, particularly 65 and older. And we now need to focus on getting our entire population vaccinated. That is what's going to be critical for this pandemic.
And operating in parallel to that massive effort is the aspect here where we're in summer vacation mode. A lot of people have reverted back to, behavior pre-pandemic kind of since they've been vaccinated. The guidelines are gone. A lot of the precautions are gone. Could we still see, under any circumstances, a super spreader event this summer in some way, or has vaccination mitigated that risk?
Well, we know that as the rates of vaccination in a community increase, even those who are unvaccinated have some level of protection. If you have a bubble around you of people who have been vaccinated, this can serve to protect you. But it really depends on what that community makeup is and how many around you are or are not vaccinated. So I can say that we would most certainly expect there to be a possibility of a super spreader event if you were around many people who are unvaccinated. It would depend a little bit on the logistics of crowd size, whether people were wearing masks, indoor versus outdoor, all the same things that we've known have been drivers since the beginning. But really the number one thing that is going to be a driver is how many people around you and whether you yourself are vaccinated.
Interesting. So if you are fully vaccinated, how concerned should you be about those around you if you are at a larger event, wondering, does this person have the vaccine or does that person have the vaccine?
If you're fully vaccinated, you really don't need to have much concern. So the vaccines are very protective, particularly against severe disease leading to hospitalization and death. And even in terms of milder illness and your ability to transmit. It's really for those who are unvaccinated and, to a degree, those who are vaccinated but have impairments in their immune system and may not have had as robust a response to the vaccine. But that's another group that sometimes will think about their risk in larger crowds.
As we wrap up here, last question for you. As kids go back to school, I know it's summertime, but we're already looking ahead here, but as kids go back to school, do you think they should be wearing masks back in those classrooms?
I think that will be a discussion that we are going to need to address as we come into August. It really is going to depend on where our community vaccination levels are, as well as the level of community transmission. It is my hope that will not be needed as children go back to school in the fall. But like everything, it's too early to say, and it really is dependent on us getting our vaccination numbers, including our vaccination numbers in eligible children, much higher than they are right now.
All right, Dr. Michael Calderwood, thank you for the expertise and the perspective here on Close Up. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.